So there's a belief that when you're covered by God's favor, that they say your name will be mentioned in rooms that you've never stepped foot into. So we'd be remiss if we did not honor the late Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson, as mentioned earlier, for nominating you for this prestigious civic award. So how did you two become such great friends?
I have to ask first, Miss Ernestine Cole, where are you? Can you wave your hand or stand up real quick? Where's Miss Ernestine
Miss Cole.
Miss Cole, there she is, Miss Cole. I know that introduction was made by Miss Cole. I think she used to work in Miss Eddie Bernice Johnson's office. And I always joke and say that I'm the hamburger flipper from Pleasant Grove because my first 2 restaurants were in Pleasant Grove. And for really for about 5, 6, 7 years, I was just up and down the street in Pleasant Grove. And sometimes I tell my pastor, I thank God for keeping his loving arm of protection, a hedge around me in Pleasant Grove. I grew up in an area like Pleasant Grove, but he kept his loving arm and protection around me. And so she wanted to have a grassroots picnic for the community. And because I was in the restaurant business, I was called in to see this congresswoman who I'd seen on TV and in the newspaper. And so one of the things, as a congresswoman, she's a talker, and as a person, I'm naturally a listener. And I heard what she was saying, and I had to go biblical on her because I didn't think that Big Macs and quarter pounders would do well at a picnic. So I said, man can't live by Big Macs alone. And what we did was, and we did this for about 12, 15 years, I would find a vendor, typically a minority vendor, and she would find a park, and we would have these picnics. And so we would have minority vendors to supply the food, but we were very professional. We listened, and I do want to say, oh, her son is here. I think besides loving the community, where's Kirk Johnson? Kirk, can you stand, give him a hand. What I observed was she loved 2 things. We would have these sessions where I call it unplugged. She had her official office, as a U.S. Congresswoman, and then she had another office that was not paid for by the government. And we would go to the other office and she would talk about how government should work, crossing the aisle and things like that. But what I did was I think I listened to her, made sure I knew whatever I did for Ms. Johnson, that we did it to perfection. And then we started getting invited to Washington, D.C. or Austin, Texas for events. But I think I earned her respect. And then sometimes she would show up at an event. I might get a minor award, and she was St. Mary's Nursing School, which is part of Notre Dame. I was Purdue University, and that was like TCU SMU or Texas A&M. And so one time the backfield for one of our football teams happened to show up, and she was giving them hell. She was giving them hell because she was in Notre Dame. But I really think I earned her respect. And Kirk, my hat's off to Miss Eddie Bernice Johnson. My hat's off.
So, Mr. Parrish, I like to say your career has 2 sides to it. We have your professional achievements, which were mentioned earlier. You have the #1 Black-owned business for the last 5 years, which is absolutely amazing. And we are all believing God for #6, right? Look, it's like the Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan has 6 rings. You have to have the 6th ring. But there's another side to your career, as been mentioned all morning. It is the intentionality that you have about making a difference in the community. Like, you have this amazing way to blend career and community. Now, I'm going to let you finish this story, but this is a prime example of Mr. Parrish's heart. So Mr. Parrish is driving up Ledbetter in Oak Cliff one day. And, the old YMCA was there that is now for Oak Cliff. Well, he noticed that the pool was empty and it had weeds growing in it. Now, instead of Mr. Parrish minding his business and going where he was supposed to go, what does Mr. Parrish do? Because of his big heart, Mr. Parrish makes a U-turn and he goes to find out, why is this swimming pool empty in Oak Cliff? So tell us what happened after that.
Okay, so I was able to meet with, first, how many people know where that hook you do in Ledbetter? If you're going east and you got to make that hook and you look at your swimming pool. And I had read about for Oak Cliff and these two former teachers, Taylor Torrance and Xavier Henderson, and I had read about them. And so turned the corner and actually had a meeting going on there with Rodney Baker. If Rodney's here, wave his hand. He's another Black-owned business contractor that I work with. And just in my own language, I just said, hey, so what's up with the pool? And they talked about, I think they had been advised to just get a bulldozer, fill it with sand, and just let it go. And I said, well, let's sit down right now and try to design a program. So one, the maintenance of the pool, getting it back in shape. Eventually, the decoration and decor and furniture around the pool. Okay, you got to have lifeguards, and so we developed the lifeguard program. We began to model this that day. And so the teenagers need summer jobs, so let's train the teenagers to be the lifeguards so then the little kids they could swim. And I think even now, this is about our 4th year, I believe now they can train their own lifeguards. So instead of farming out the training, to me, we have a very comprehensive swimming pool program. And I believe it's about 2,000 people have visited the Fort Oak Cliff. But to me, that was something where I saw the need, I felt I could afford it, and so let's do it. Let's just sit down here and do it right now and make it happen.
And see, to a lot of people, absolutely. To many, they will look at a pool and say, what's the big deal about having a pool? But in that community, especially in minority communities, our kids are looking for things to do over the summertime. So it's the pool that keeps on giving because there's jobs, because the pool is now open. So there's a form of entertainment with that, Mr. Parrish.
Yeah, and I believe I've got a project with pools, swimming pools. I'm going to tie in something. I read an article by Councilwoman Carolyn King-Arnold. And so I want to talk to Communities Foundation because I think I have a wider pool program that we want to try to put together. So we want to talk about that in December. See if we make it happen in the southern sector.
You always have great ideas, Mr. Parrish. All right, also Mr. Parrish's foundation, which I did not hear this being mentioned earlier, you partner with the Texas Rangers, which I'm told is the first partnership of its kind. It's a 4-year, $250,000 commitment that offers minority students a chance to work in the Texas Rangers front office, which was part of their commitment to increase minority representation in the front office, which is amazing. Now, from my understanding, some of those interns have actually been hired to work for the Texas Rangers. Is that valid?
Yeah, true. Now, first, where are the Texas Rangers? World champion Texas Rangers.
Yes. There
they are. America loves a champion, right? The world champion Texas Rangers. It's been a great partnership. We're going into our second 4 years with it. So we bring in 5 students. And the thing, a lot of young people want to work for a sports team. But most of these interns, the demand is so high that they're non-paying internships.
Right.
And so I said, well, one of the things we've got to do, we have to pay the interns. And so, we got that settled. And the program is growing. I have to thank UT Arlington, Dr. Bobadilla, for partnering with us also to make sure we get this program right for the students. So UTA, a shout out to University of Texas at Arlington. And I'll just say our key, I think we'd have to say our number one person, our number one recruit, he went through the program. He actually was hired by the Rangers. He scouted Arizona Diamondbacks when we played them in the World Series, like the previous year. And I believe it's Kendall Coleman. Kendall Coleman, he's from the East Coast. But now he's with the Milwaukee Brewers, and he reports directly to the general manager of the Milwaukee Brewers. And others have worked for teams like the Denver Broncos, the Los Angeles Lakers, the Dallas Wings, the Seattle Seahawks. So these interns now, because you have that on the resume, they're beginning to move forward. So we hope to continue to partner with the Charlie Pride Texas Rangers Foundation to get minority representation and women in the front office of pro sports. But thank you, world champion Texas Rangers.
And obviously we can go on and on. There's hundreds of examples of you exemplifying true servant leadership, and we appreciate you so much for that. But I have to ask you, why is it so important for you to combine serving alongside helping men and women to achieve the American dream?
this is a slight McDonald's story, and I do have some fellow franchisees here. We were in a meeting, probably my second year as a franchisee, and I tell you, my goal was to have 3 to 5 McDonald's. When people try to get in business, I tell them, you don't get in business, get rich. You get in business to pay the mortgage and send the kids to school. If you come out any better than that, because most businesses fail, 2/3 fail in the first year, then another half fail in the next 5 years. And so my goal was 3 to 5 McDonald's. And whoever the powers that be with McDonald's asked that question, I said, well, I want to have 3 to 5 restaurants. So then they turned to another gentleman after me, Darren Pace, who was a franchisee also. And he said, well, I want to make a difference in the community. And I said, man, I wish I'd have said that. And so that resonated with me. I talked with Darren about a week ago, and he vaguely remembers the meeting, but I remember so vividly. Now, I'm gonna tell you, my parents worked in the community, so I began to see that as a child. When you first open your first restaurant, and guys, I opened my first restaurant, you put all your money to get the franchise, and then we were told we had to give $500 to a charity to open. And that was, Dr. Flowers, that was painful, $500. But we gave to a YMCA. And so I began to see our giving. And I began to understand the accounting of it. And it's like, you have petty cash. And I began to see where in my business, I could begin to divert funds to help the community. So when the churches came in, and they had a program, or the cheerleaders came in, or the football team, I began to see that if I began to set money aside, and I tell some franchisees now, I think I first started with maybe $50 a restaurant that I would put to the side and build a treasury. Now, it's a lot more than that I put to the side now, but I begin to build this bank of funds. And so then if someone comes to me and I think it's a great idea and I can afford it, then that's what we do. Now, also, with the charity, once my children take over, it's kind of authoritative now, like, I've got the power. But it'll become, more corporate, and they'll have to make different decisions. But right now, mine is like, okay, if I can afford it, and I think it's a good idea. Plus, if I could go direct, if I could get scholarships directly to a student, and I'm not so much for programs and things like that. Fort Oak Cliff was a program, so to speak, but it was directly, you could walk in there and see that pool. And you could see people swimming in the pool. Taylor, when we opened, he said, we're going to have a competition. We're going to race each other. I said, why do you think I did a pool? Because I can't swim. Because when I was a kid, we didn't have a pool. So, but anyway, if I can afford it and if it's a great idea, then I know I try to do it. And hey, let's try to get it done quickly. Let's work it out. Let's not go through the red tape. Let's get it done. I'm sure my children, they're going to have to go through more red tape. But anyway, hopefully I've been a good example for them.
Mr. Parrish, what do you want to be remembered for?
I thought about this, Lady Jade. Now, obviously, I hope my family would think, that Jewel would think I've been a C-plus husband. Hope my children would think that I'm at least a A-minus. Sometimes I tell my children, you got a good dad. When I do something for them, I say, you got a good dad. Ro doesn't say anything, but Jay to say, yeah, Dad. And, yeah.
He just received the A+, everyone.
And Wesley's out there somewhere. Wesley kind of just looks at me and smiles. So, but I hope that they'll think that I was a good father and a good mentor. And I don't know if little Jordan is here, my grandbaby. We got one coming. And I touch Jade's stomach every time I see her. So we hope number 2 is coming. Is my grandbaby out there? If you are, stand up and wave your hand. Yeah. Wave your hand. There you go. Grandbaby number 1, Jordan. Much love, babe. You got a good granddad. So I hope that my family thinks that I was a good father. And this now becomes the city of Dallas. That they would say, yeah, he was a pretty good businessman, but he did make a difference. And so, guys, sometimes I think about it. I don't know how, long life is, But sometimes I look at the Library of Purdue, the school at Fisk. We have the hospital named after my parents in Uganda, the Parrish Park that happened here. And sometimes I say, God, is God let me see these things? I hope I'm around a while. But I hope that people will look at those and say, you know what, he did some good things. He made a difference in people's lives.
So, many of us, we get up and go to work with maybe one day the hope of building generational wealth, or maybe we want a certain lifestyle, or we're looking forward to retirement. But Mr. Parrish, you literally get up every single day with a drive and mindset like you are just getting started. And the more I've gotten to know you, I believe that you do that because of your why. Now, your why story actually made me rethink my why, because I realized that my why had to be bigger than me, and it couldn't be about me. So if you don't mind sharing what we've labeled it as the boot story, but if you don't mind sharing with our guests today your why, so people can understand why you give back, why you work so hard. Like, you do not stop, and I know you will not stop.
And I think this is the last piece for everybody here. And I do get emotional on this story. And let you know, I had a good family. We were a nuclear family. You saw the picture of my mother, my father, me, and my brother. But I always talk about my grandfather. And so it was about 100 years ago. He left Arkansas. He was a sharecropper. And it was during the Depression. And he moved to Memphis, Tennessee. And when I look at the generations, if we could go back to my great-great-grandfather, E. Chester Nugget Parrish, they always moved where they could get a better job and where their children could get a better education, whether it was from the Carolinas to Arkansas to Tennessee to up north. And so my grandfather left sharecropping, moved to Memphis, and he worked at a gravel pit during the Depression. And so I was told this story that he would get up around 4:30. Now he'd get up at 4. He'd have breakfast so he could leave at 4:30 to get to the gravel pit. And I was told that his boots didn't have soles, so he had to put wire mesh into his boots. It didn't have shoestrings, he had wire, and he'd have to take pliers to tie his shoes. And he would leave at 4:30 to make the 30-minute walk, North Memphis, Wolf River. Yeah, the Wolf River, he would pass through the Wolf River. And he would get there at 5 in the morning. But the man, the NFL owner, the NBA owner, the banker, the man would set out the number of shovels that he needed workers for. If he needed 10 workers, 10 shovels, 5. He would set out 5 shovels. And if he only needed 1 worker, he'd set out 1 shovel. And I was told my grandfather would get there at 5 because he would be the first in line. So if the man only needed 1 person, he would get the shovel. He could work. So I know I stand on his shoulders. And the importance of scholarship and education, he eventually bought books and taught himself how to be a carpenter. And someone found one of his old business cards. So I have a replica of his business card back in 1930s. So by the 30s, he was a contractor. But that drive, he could have said, I'm not going to walk over the Wolf River, in bare feet. But he put the wire mesh, got the pliers, tied his shoes, got there an hour early. And so I stand on his shoulders. And I thank him for that. His name was Will Leander Parrish, but I stand on his shoulders. And my wife asked me one day why I worked so hard, and I remember I told her that boot story. And so I think about that. And what I ask you, think of some, especially if you get into business, think of some family story that would motivate you. Because when I get tired, I think about, my grandfather, I think he would be very proud of me. He'd be very proud of me. One of my aunts gave me his saw. So I started to bring it here and have it on an easel. We made a nice shadow box with my first spatula, his saw, his business card from the 1930s. But think of a family story that motivates you. And that's what I lean on. That's my why. That's my why.
Well, Mr. P, isn't that beautiful? I think everyone in this room would agree. You bring great honor to the Parrish name. We love you. We love your dedication. We love your heart. Thank you for being a trailblazer. Thank you for being a leader, a legacy creator. Thank you for being a champion of goodwill. You make our community, you make our city and our world a better place. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you very much.
Can you please stand and honor the 95th LINZ Award recipient, Mr. Roland G. Parrish.